and the officials of POHAN for having me here. So I'll say congratulations on the United Nations Public Service Day 2021. Thank you very much. So, okay, let me begin by saying that I identify with the mission and the vision for POHAN. Absolutely. I believe that public service is to add value to the citizens of our country. So I'm speaking on innovation, a panacea to effective governance. Innovation, a panacea to effective governance. Now, talking about innovation, I had somebody say some time ago that if you died 100 years ago in a village in Africa and you woke up now, you would pretty much still find your way around, and that you'll be comfortable with the food because not much has changed. Well, I'll also like to say that Nigerians can be very innovative. Africans can be innovative, and we see the signs. Maybe some of us would have watched the skits from some young chaps in Ikorodu town in Lagos State. They call them Ikorodu boys. They take skits, from celebrities around the world, and they mimic those skits. And I'll tell you the part that, just gets me each time. It's when they get to the part where they have to act somebody driving a car. You know what they do? One of them gets into a wheelbarrow and they push the person around in the wheelbarrow. And honestly, they have gotten acclaim from all over the world, that's some innovation. Another interesting one that I recollect is that when I was a teenager and my dad's business ran into rough weather, that whenever he was going out to town to see someone, he would take me along in the car. Not because I had anything meaningful to add to the discussion, but because he needed me to push the car to start, okay? So those that designed the cars did not design for them to start without the batteries, working. But when the power of the battery had failed, he carried me around. I was the innovation, okay? But generally, I'm just saying that we can be innovative if we want. But I think that we have a cultural setback when it comes to innovation, and we should bear that in mind. We should bear that in mind as we go through this brief discussion. Anyone that is going to be innovative, especially in the developing part of the world, needs to understand there's already a cultural setback. I've been studying for a few decades now, for several years, I've been discussing the differences between the parts of the world that we call developed and the parts of the world that we call developing. And one of the things I realized was geography, that almost all the countries you call developed are in the temperate part of the world. Almost all are in the cold regions of the world. And honestly, at first I thought, what? What does that mean? Does it mean that the heat in Nigeria affects my brain? Then I better go for an air conditioner very fast and make sure that I cool my brain down so it can be creative. But this is what I discovered in my studies, that the famous saying, necessity is the mother of invention, comes to play there. The weather is just so harsh. The cold can be so bad. It kills people every year. Okay, so inventing heaters, heating processes just had to happen inventing communication devices, for example, or technology had to happen, because when you have 40 inches of snow dumped on the city and it's freezing cold, and the snow turns to ice, and you may lose your life trying to see a relative across town, you have to find a way to speak to the relative without leaving your house. So we should not be surprised that the telephone was invented. You look back at Africa and you realize we have been spoilt by nature, literally spoilt. Okay, so why shouldn't you walk to your neighbor's house? What's going to happen? The worst would be rain. And since we tell ourselves, since we're not salt, we will not dissolve. Okay, so the challenge to innovate is not as strong. But that may turn out to be a disadvantage at the end of the day. So I want to share a few tips with us, that would help us to provide leadership in the innovation process as public office holders. How do we define good governance? Because we're discussing innovation as a panacea to effective governance. So how do we describe effective governance? The UN Office of Drugs and Crime defines good governance as the process whereby public institutions conduct public affairs and manage public resources in a manner that promotes the rule of law and the realization of human rights. And those rights include civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. Okay. Innovation, on the other hand, is a process by which a domain, a product, or a service is renewed and brought up to date by applying new processes, introducing new techniques, or establishing successful ideas to create new value. So the objective at the end of the day is to create new value. Innovation is the process through which a domain, a product, or a service is renewed and brought up to date by applying new processes, new techniques, okay, or establishing successful ideas to create value. The pandemic, the global pandemic has created, or should I say, has pressed the reset button on our planet. That's part of why we're having the conference this year on Zoom, isn't it? It's a reset button that has been placed on our world. And somebody said, when the music changes, you change your dance steps. When the music changes, you change your dance steps. In the private sector, I have seen organizations of various kinds change their dance steps. I've seen a hotel, for example, right in the thick of the pandemic and the lockdown that, because the hotels were locked down, nobody was lodging in. So they just swung, and their dry cleaning services, that offered dry cleaning services only for guests of the hotel before, began to offer dry cleaning services for the whole city. We saw the restaurants at the hotels begin to offer takeout services, offer delivery services also. We saw some organizations, even organizations that produce alcohol, alcoholic drinks, they pivoted quickly, and some of them began to produce hand sanitizers. And I have clients in my consulting services that were manufacturing something else before, and then they began to manufacture disinfectants, and some began to manufacture face masks and so on. Since that has happened, I'm just saying it's time for us to pivot, look for ways, to improve service delivery to the public that we serve now more than ever before. Government and public institutions need to deliver social goods in innovative ways now, because one of the things that the pandemic has done is to heighten the demand for social services, social goods. by the public. People are more desperate now, and they are less patient. So most governments in the world realize they have to prevent social problems right now, social upheaval. Because when people are hungry, they become angry, okay? My emphasis today is on leadership, the role of leadership in the whole process. Leadership remains the core catalyst for driving creativity and innovation in any organization, any agency, maybe private, maybe public. Leadership is the core catalyst for driving creativity and innovation. I should then say that being satisfied with the status quo runs contrary to the very essence of leadership. Anyone leading any agency of government who would prefer for things to remain the way they are instead of radically changing them is defying the very essence of leadership, is working against the very essence of leadership. Without visionary leadership, many innovative ideas will not see the light of day. The leader's job is to create the environment for innovation. Honestly, the potential for innovation is already in people. It's there. People want their conditions to improve. People want the systems to improve. Okay, so the potential is there. Leaders are brokers of talent. Our job is to create the environment for those skills, those talents, those desires that people have, the passion that they have. Our job is to fan them to flame, allow them to work. So let me give us a few thoughts in the few minutes that I have left. A few thoughts. First, as a leader, guide your team to identify areas of impact. It's not going to be enough to say to our team, we need to be innovative. Where? In which area? So it may be a product that we offer. It may be a service that we offer. It may be the process for offering the service. It may be that we want to improve on the time. We want to make this thing happen at a shorter time from now on. We don't want to keep people in this office waiting for 4 hours for something they can get in 15 minutes or 30 minutes, okay? So, you know, one of the core characteristics of a leader is vision. So we've got to see the state that we want ahead and to be able to communicate it to people. Guide your team to identify areas of impact. Sometimes the area of impact could have to do with personnel. It may be just rotating people on the job, because with time, a leader gets to find out, look, this guy is a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. Okay, when people are struggling, you know, to achieve results, sometimes they're just in the wrong place. That's all. It doesn't matter how fantastic a seed is. It will not produce, it won't grow in the wrong soil, right? So the job of the leader is identifying the area of impact. Secondly, be a model. Be a model. And this is what I mean. As a leader, you've got to show that you value innovation, that you seek for improvement, that you are not satisfied with the status quo. You know, I said it earlier on that, you know, being satisfied with the status quo just makes nonsense of the very essence of leadership. So in modeling, my recommendation is that you as the leader should challenge existing assumptions, okay? Challenge the status quo. Why should we continue to do things this way? Okay. I also pastor a church, and I remember, you know, innovation is one of our core values. And I remember many years ago, we wanted to shrink the length of the service. I saw a lot of inefficiency, okay, wasting of time. Sometimes you make an announcement, it has to do with only 20 people, and you have 1,000 people present. In my view, you wasted the time of 980 people. So I said, look, let's find a way to do everything we do, but shrink the time. And then we needed to rearrange the order of the service. So I said, let's move the song, the singing of the choir, from before the preaching, move it to after the preaching. Somebody said, what? Sir, it's never done. That's not the way it's done. I said, why shouldn't it be done another way? They said, but you know, the singing prepares everybody, you know, prepares the atmosphere for the preaching. I said, fine. So all of our preaching, we're copying Jesus Christ, isn't it? They said, yes. So I said, what was the name of the lady that used to sing before Jesus did his preaching at his crusades? Then everybody burst into laughter. I said, exactly. I said, you know what? It's all tradition. There's nowhere you will find in your Bible where they wrote the order of service. It's just tradition. So you've got to identify what is doctrine and what is not, and tweak the one that is not fixed from heaven. So that's what I mean. As a leader, we encourage innovation. If you, the leader, are breaking the unwritten rules like that, then your team members feel the freedom to also break the unwritten rules. Next, encourage ownership. Encourage ownership. That's my third piece of advice. Encourage ownership. And this is what I mean. In practically every organization or agency, you'll find one thing, that people break into two groups. You find especially the people at the lower levels in the organization, you know, disowning the organization, separating themselves from the people in management. So you hear them use the language, they, we, they. We don't even know what they're doing. You know, they're in a meeting again, see, they're there organizing people's destinies, they. And once they do that, there's the limit to how much they're going to contribute to the development of the organization, because they see themselves as victims. So I challenge people, think like the CEO, think like you own this place, okay? Think like you're the boss. You will be amazed at the kind of ideas that will come to you. I did that when I was an employee, and I found out I was then thinking about problems that were beyond the scope of my title, okay, or job description. And that made me to begin to read books, to research what my CEO should be reading. Then I began to get ideas that almost exploded my head, you know, but they were powerful ideas, made me so valuable to the organization. I rose to the top very fast. Encourage ownership. Next, let ideas flow from all levels. Let ideas flow from all levels. This is critical. And I'll bring our cultural background in again at this point, okay? Because in most of the developing part of the world, research has shown that our leadership culture has what we call hierarchical distance. The gap between the boss and the person at the bottom is too wide. The powerful are very powerful, the powerless are very powerless. That makes the voice of the powerless or the followers to not be heard. We do it with our children. So I find out people tend to not talk. Yet, it is the line managers, the people that actually interact with the public, interact with the customers. They are the ones that get the most practical ideas on how to improve things. When you don't listen to them, some of your innovations will not work. I'm sorry to say that to the leader. Some of your innovations will not work. And when you find out, when you bring in consultants, you do your powerful strategies and all that, those people at the bottom will not execute them because they don't own the ideas. They know what should work, but because nobody's listening to them, they're not going to talk. So we need to allow ideas to come from all levels. Some of the best breakthrough ideas we will get will come from people at the lower levels. Next, celebrate diversity. Celebrate diversity. Innovation is more likely to happen when people of diverse backgrounds, genders, and areas of expertise. Okay, innovation is more likely to happen when people of different backgrounds, genders, and areas of expertise share their perspectives on the same issue. Okay. Um, okay, sorry, I need to work on my camera here. I think my camera is gonna forbid. Okay, so let me continue. All right. So innovation is more likely when people of different backgrounds, genders, and areas of expertise share their perspectives on the same issue. So I'll tell you from experience, for example, that it makes a world of difference to have at least one lady on the table. Okay? At least one lady, because the way she would think would be completely different. If you don't have a wholesome perspective like that, I've run teams that are almost all men, and then maybe it was only my wife that was the lady on the table. And one day we had, planned all the powerful plans that we had. And then when we're done, she said, please, just one more thing. Does everybody on this table feel loved? And he was like, oh, what does that have to do with the job? But honestly, that led to a discussion that ran for hours. And if the relationships on the team are not working well, not much is going to work there. Okay, celebrate diversity, embrace failure. I'm almost done. Embrace failure. Innovating is experimenting. Give people room to fail. Don't kill people just because they made a mistake. Innovating is experimenting. And in experimenting, you try, you learn from the failure, and you try again. And next, execute innovative ideas. That's number 6. Execute innovative ideas. In other words, when you've done your brainstorming, you've done your planning, decisions, discussions, make sure what you agree on is executed. If you don't, it will discourage people. Next time, they won't contribute their best ideas because it won't be done anyway. Make sure what you agree on is executed, it is done. And finally, pay attention to your leadership culture. In your agency, in your unit, in your department, pay attention to your leadership culture. There is the culture generally, but there is the leadership culture also. How do we lead? And again, I'm asking us to pay attention to our traditional culture of leadership. Once the leader is too powerful and the followers are powerless, what you will find will be that the people at the top in your organization will silence the people that serve under them. As a leader, you need to pay particular attention to that. I'm conscious, maybe when we're at a meeting, I'm conscious of the fact that naturally around us, the junior officers don't want to speak up. All the senior guys need to do is just look at them once, and some people just freeze. They don't want to talk. And I know we're not going to make much progress if we allow that to happen. So you need to pay attention to leadership culture and model the culture that you want to see. Public service is what it is. It is service. It is meeting needs. It is solving problems. And if we're going to meet needs, solve problems, add value, we've got to do it in a very innovative way. Thank you for having me, and I wish us a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Sam Adeyemi. That was very inspirational and insightful. We're very happy that you are one of our guest speakers. On behalf of POHAN, I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.